Hello everyone and welcome back to another week here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard as always. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy Monday here to you all. And on this Monday afternoon, we should have a great show ahead. Starting off with our Monday Night Football preview. We're going to have to do it, even though both of these teams are in bad spots right now. It's the Bengals going up against the Cowboys. Hopefully, this game can be better than I think it is. And then going over my fantasy stars of the NFL weekend. A lot to talk about in that department. Starting my positional rankings for the final week of the fantasy football regular season. Yes, it has come finally with the QB position. Then going over some odds for award season with the Defensive Player of the Year race really heating up. And then concluding with my Don't Be Surprised If segment as always. But before we get into any of that fun stuff, I do want to remind you that if you want more content such as this, plus any exclusive shorts that we post, consider liking, following, subscribing to the show and the network as a whole. It is greatly appreciated by all in advance. A lot of great people are doing a lot of great things there. You can check out our website where we have exclusive articles as well. But if you want to interact with us a little bit more directly while we are live streaming, consider making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. Great way to contribute and interact with the show as well. You can do it through our website, gsmcpodcast.net. You can leave a question, comment, or concern there, and a tip or a tip or donation as well, or just do it through YouTube. It just makes this show that much better with all your contributions and interactions throughout the show's duration. But without further ado, let us jump right into our first segment of the day. We're going to have to talk about this game, even though it's potentially going to be one of the weirder Monday Night Football games we've had this season. It is the Bengals going up against the Dallas Cowboys, surprisingly, with a better record than them. And the reason being is that the Bengals are simply wasting some of the best moments of Joe Burrow's career as an NFL quarterback. And not for nothing, this team, if it just had at least a pretty competent defense, a middle-of-the-pack defense, could be an AFC playoff contender. But because of the fact, whatever's happening with that defense has really taken its toll on this team. They now sit at 4-8. And it's kind of shocking that right now, the Dallas Cowboys, without Dak Prescott, who had countless injuries this season, especially on their defensive side of the football, come in with a better record at 5-7. But let's talk about both of these teams' strengths, starting off with the Bengals' offense, because Joe Burrow, if this were, say, right now an 8-4 or 8-5 football team rather than a 4-8 football team, chances are Joe Burrow would be firmly in the MVP conversation, if not the front runner. But because of this team's limitations on the defensive side of the football, Joe Burrow is getting wasted in this team. And I feel like it's kind of not comeuppance in a sense, but looking at what happened this offseason with the Bengals, with all these weird contract rumors about T. Higgins and then Jamar Chase before the season began, and how that might have impacted this team into where they are now, this offense has truly coalesced together and has really been the more mature unit for the Cincinnati Bengals all year long. Now let's look at the defense, because this defense has star players. It has guys like Trey Hendrickson. Yes, it's lost a little bit of depth, but ultimately has really kind of been underwhelming all year long. This was, in many people's minds before the season, going to be a top 10 unit that complemented what the best of the Bengals offense could be all season long. And that's why a lot of people were very hyped about them in terms of their playoff contender status and potentially their Super Bowl contender status. But now they sit here at 4-8 because of the ineptitudes of that very unit. And it could have been a very different story early in the season had they piled wins in spite of what their defense was putting out on the field. But we're now more than 2.5 quarters of the way through the season, almost 3 quarters of the way through the season, and the Bengals are at 4-8 because of it. Now we look at the Cowboys coming into this one. And this Cowboys team is very weird in many regards, right? Because they lose a lot at home, buy a lot at home, and they don't have their quote-unquote franchise quarterback anymore after that season-ending injury a couple weeks ago. Now they have Cooper Rush that they have to rely upon. He hasn't necessarily played poorly, but he hasn't necessarily played, competently enough to keep this team afloat. Yes, they've won, but I think the major reason as to why they've won is because they got healthier on the better side of the football, and that is the defense. They didn't have Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence for long stretches of this game, and because of that linebacking core, which was seen as one of the best in the NFL, really was decimated, and a lot of people were able to establish the run game on them. But when I look at the Bengals, that's one of their weaknesses, right? They don't necessarily have the strongest run game. Yes, there's a lot of hope surrounding Chase Brown and what he could potentially be in this roster, but the addition in the offseason of Zach Moss really didn't help them, and they haven't really needed it. But the reason why the Dallas Cowboys have a much better record is because they play complementary football in that they don't necessarily ask Cooper Rush to do that much now that he's starting compared to what they were doing with Dak Prescott. And that's kind of relieved the pressure. Yes, they haven't necessarily played a team the caliber of what the Bengals can bring on the opposite side of the football, and they're going to have to most likely play catch-up in this one. When I look at this defense, and what it's done for this team, the rejuvenation of this unit with the comeback play of Micah Parsons, with the comeback play of DeMarcus Lawrence, and their big guys up front there, I feel like this game could be a lot closer than people think. And I feel like a lot of people actually forgot about these two teams' records, and that everyone is thinking, oh, the Cincinnati Bengals are playing so well offensively. Surely, even though their defense has been bad, they have more than 5 wins. But that's not the case. And if you think about the Cowboys, they've been terrible to start the season, mid-season as well. They have the Dak injury. They can't possibly be sitting at 5 wins, only 2 games below 500, and yet that's where they stand. And so I can't really justify why anyone would place weight on this game in terms of a betting perspective, but it is a fun game to analyze just because both of these teams, their strengths are very strong, but their weaknesses are some of the most flawed in the NFL. And so, looking at this bizarre game, I feel like if you were to bet on it, it would have to come from a place of understanding that these two teams can create chaos in many different ways on a football field when they go up against each other. This can either be a high-scoring game in which the Cowboys are going to have to rely on playing catch-up through the speed of their different players. Maybe their special teams scores a couple touchdowns and keeps this game close. Or this is going to be the Cowboys came to lose in that their defense, which has been playing better of late, somehow stymies this Bengals offense. So that's why I'm not fully confident in terms of who I would necessarily pick to win this game. I will ultimately decide on a winner by the end of this segment, but I don't necessarily feel like I will be convincing you to pick one team or the other. It would just be of a grudging choice because of the weirdness of this game and these two teams specifically. And so I feel like from a betting perspective, Cincinnati being the 5-point favorite, the over-under being 49.5, Cincinnati minus 240, Dallas plus 200, there's definitely space to choose either team in this matchup. It's not like, it's so uneven that you feel you can't justify one team over the other in this matchup. This game certainly could go either way. But then again, I feel like the Bengals offense at home with nothing to play for, going up against the Cowboys team, it certainly feels like their last 2 wins were paper tiger-esque. I certainly feel like there's more of a chance for the Bengals to assert their dominance on offense, score enough points where their defense can kind of try and settle into this game, that the Cowboys won't threaten them. I do think the Cowboys eventually will be able to put up points in this one. And I think this game has a nice chance of potentially hitting the over, surprisingly. But it's going to come down to the Bengals' superiority in being able to put up points consistently. That leads me to believe that a Cincinnati Bengals win will be the most likely outcome and what bettors should be advised when betting on. So that's why I'm picking the Bengals. It's a little bit reluctant because this certainly could feel like the bizarre game the Cowboys had against the Commanders, where they had timely special teams plays and Cooper Rush did just enough and was efficient enough late in that game for them to win. But I just can't ignore what this Bengals offense is doing. And if they put up enough points, chances are this Cowboys offense simply will not be able to keep up with it. And so that's the reason why I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals 40-27 in this one. Also look for this game to potentially hit the over because the Cowboys might score some garbage time points for you. But ultimately, that's how I see this game going. There's more of a chance this Bengals offense catches fire than this Cowboys defense has of slowing them down. And that's why I have to choose them. And let me know what you think about this game in the comments because it's truly a bizarre one. I could have gone either way here in just feeling more confident in what the Bengals have to offer for tonight. But coming up next, we transition to looking at some of the fantasy stars of the NFL weekend. A lot in both windows to discuss. We'll be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?